So today I've got Charlotte Craig with me. Really excited. I've been stalking you a little bit on your TikTok. Feeling a bit old actually, but I do like the dad jokes.
Oh, do
Thank
yeah.
you very much.
I love
Yes.
that. I'm glad you do.
So you are a content creator, but something that, changed in your life that made you swing over to this direction. So if I'd met you a few years ago, you wouldn't have any of this experience. So it's great. So let's just talk a little bit about what you do and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So like you say, 3 years ago, I would not be in this position right now. And that's down to some sad times in my life, but I feel quite privileged that I've got to this point. So basically I was a secondary school teacher. I taught performing arts and English. Absolutely loved my job. And unfortunately I had an accident, which meant that I could no longer teach. And to keep myself positive and busy, I started posting content online. And it just grew. And the more I was open about my experiences and, well, I was trying to make myself feel better, it started to make other people laugh and feel better. And then it just kind of grew from there. So I'm very lucky in terms of going from such a dark time to where I am now.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for the accident and what I went through, I wouldn't be in this position that we're in right now.
So you had quite a traumatic, well, not quite, very traumatic accident that came out of the blue that's really changed your course of life, direction, everything. What happened?
So I went paddleboarding. It was just kind of, I went out with my sister, my boyfriend and her partner, and we just decided to go paddleboarding. It was a lovely day. It was the 11th of September. And we just decided to go paddleboarding. And we were told that we could jump off into the water and swim. And I'm from the Lake District. I was straight. As soon as I found out I could get in that water, I was straight in it. So I was jumping off, having a lovely day. And we were about to get out of the water. And I said, I'm just going to jump in one more time. I jumped in and didn't realise that the water was shallow in that specific bit. It was just really unlevel, that's not the right word, is it? But it wasn't level. Jumped off and my shin and my femur just went into one, and completely dislocated. My everything ruptured. I snapped my ACL, PCL, MCL, POL and meniscus.
So that's all the ligaments basically that support the knee joint.
All of them. The only thing that was keeping they thought they were going to have to amputate. But after having a scan, I don't know how, and I know how lucky I am. My blood vessels stayed intact, and that was the only thing that stayed intact. So since then, I've had 4 operations so far. So this was 2.5 years ago. 4 operations so far and still recovering. I've had to learn they said that I may never walk again. But I've proved them wrong twice. So I feel like I can do it a third time.
Amazing.
But I'm getting there slowly but surely.
It's going in the right direction. That's the most important thing, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And I think it's a lot, isn't it? In life, you've got to be thinking about any positives because everyone I really feel has got, or most people have got a backstory, something that's gone on. But I do think anything negative can actually make us stronger, make us more resilient, make us different, make us focus on the good things in life and the things that we probably took for granted.
Absolutely.
Like walking. I don't need to tell you, we take it for granted every time we get off the chair, every time we just get out of bed, looking at what you went through in hospital. I did see your x-ray and it was an awful dislocation.
It makes me shudder, and it happened to me. No, you're so right. I definitely it's completely changed my outlook on life, and it's made me so appreciative of the small things in life. And I try, through my content, I try to really send that message as much as I possibly can, because everybody, like you say, everybody's got a backstory. Everybody's gone through something traumatic, be it something, it doesn't have to be as big as a huge accident. It could be anything, you know, everybody's different, but it teaches you to, you know, apply that to other things in life, to other difficult things that you may go through. And yeah, like you say, just look at life at a different angle, you know, be appreciative of the fact that you can walk and make yourself a cup of coffee in the morning, or enjoy the nature and stuff. So it really, really has changed my outlook on life, I think.
And one of the things that came through, just again, stalking you on TikTok, was just that, like, the closeness of, like, your mum and other people. And I think often, and certainly I'm quite a bit older than you, but you suddenly go through life thinking, oh, I haven't seen any friends, I'm just too focused on work. And then you realise, like, you don't need many friends, but you do need those ones, because when something awful happens, that's when you need people there. And it just, like, seeing how much care and love you had must have made such a difference.
Oh, a huge difference. I don't know what I would have done without my partner. I used to be so independent, fiercely. And I didn't realise how toxic it actually was. I think because obviously I'm such an advocate for female empowerment, you know, but it got to a point where when I was teaching and when I was doing my own thing, I would kind of just be like, I can do everything on my own. I can, you know, I can look after myself. I don't need, you know, a partner. I was single for 6 years, you know. And I got with my partner, I think it was 9 months before my accident.
So not that long, really.
Not long at all. And to see how he reacted to the change in our circumstances was just inspiring. You know, he was so just there for me and cared for me. And you know what? The hardest part of the accident was letting go of that fierce independence that I did have. It was so difficult, and I really struggled with it. And I would try and kind of push him away at moments, because I just thought, I can do it on my own, but I couldn't. And that's definitely something that I learned, was that it's okay to have help, to have somebody who really cares about you and look after you, and like my family and, you know, the close friends, you know, having them beside me and having them to speak to going through it has really, really helped, because I would never do that before. I would never just text or call them if I was feeling down. But now it forced me to. It forced me to reach out, you know.
Which is so important. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it, I think, with social media, because, you know, when I was young, there was no internet, there was no social media, which my children find really hard to understand. But also social media, I think, looking at it both ways. So looking at it as you as the content creator who's putting out to people, but also people who are receiving as well. And it's slightly different in some ways, because you're reaching people that you don't know. You don't know from Adam. They're very different to these close family friends. But you do have this sort of like codependency. It's sort of like self-gratification. It is that sort of thing. But then actually it's still not quite a real world as well, is it? But then it's also, I think there's a sort of fine line almost between portraying something that you're not for you, but lots of people on social media will have all the filters on. They will look amazing. They will tell you about their perfect day. And you know, one of my patients ages ago, it just stuck with me, because she said to me, she was very, very depressed. She had lots of things going on. And she said, Dr. Newson, do you know what? I am so depressed today that I didn't even post on my Facebook. And I do it every day to show people that I'm actually all right. And I thought that's really quite worrying, because, you know, it is a bit of an act sometimes on social media, and then people think that everyone is really positive and everyone's having a perfect day, and why don't I have a perfect family that never argues, or a perfect partner that you never fall out with? And that's not real. And so what you've done is found that balance where you know, you're showing the difference between what's perfect and what isn't,
Thank
you know,
you.
and I think that's really, really important though, isn't it? And I wonder whether that's made people like resonate with you a bit more and sort of can feel you, because you go from looking absolutely beautiful with all your makeup on to like, just, this is me, you know, and but that's real life, isn't
Yes,
it?
absolutely. And I'm so glad that you picked up on that, because that's what I want to do. I want to be like, if I'm sad today, I'm going to tell you I'm sad. If I'm angry, I'm going to talk about it, you know, and not to feel the pressure of putting on a facade every single day, like I used to.
Yes.
Which is interesting. And it wasn't until I started being completely transparent and real, like not wearing my makeup, wearing no bra, you know, like not looking perfect all the time, because who does? Who can be bothered, you know? And yeah, just showing each element of life, because that is what life is. It's not all happy all the time. It's not, I'm going to wake up in the morning and have a shower straight away and make my coffee. You know, if you want to have a lie-in, have a lie-in, you know. Just.
And do people like that? Do people comment on that?
Yes, they do. I think the conversations that I have with my audience are very much like, without tooting my own horn, but they say how real and how it makes them feel kind of safe and okay with just being who they are, you know, because I laugh loud. You know, I'm very loud. I talk a lot. And sometimes that's kind of not frowned upon, but people judge you for anything that you do, anything. And I have a very, my outlook on it all is just been like, who cares? Who cares? I mean, if you want to not wear makeup or like, you know, wear pajamas all day or not shave your legs or whatever, just do it. It's fine. You're not hurting anyone, you know. That's just my outlook on it. And to share that, I think, is hopefully having an impact on especially my younger audience. And I think it's important to show each element of
I think
life.
it's so important, and it's interesting because you don't call yourself a social media influencer.
No.
It's more of a creator, and it is that fine line. And I think it's really important to highlight that, because when you talk about social media influencers, and lots of people are referred to as them, some of them really are, because they're paid to promote, they want you to buy X makeup brand or whatever. But actually, you are creating this content to help people feel differently, maybe about their emotions, their circumstances, or maybe just have a bit of a laugh. That's fine.
That's it.
So it is really different how people should or shouldn't use social media as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think I have friends that go by influencer as their job title, but personally, I don't think I've got a good relationship with the word, because I feel like when you influence something, you're in control of something. So like the word influence is like under the influence of, you know.
Yeah.
It's just kind of it sounds like a controlling word, and I would hate to be that. I would hate to feel like I've got to have an influence on someone and push something down the throat that they don't want, you know.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, the way that content creators and influencers make their money is by working with brands. But I always try my best to make sure that if I am working with a brand, it's authentic. It's a brand that I love.
Yes.
It's a brand.
So you're in control, aren't you?
Exactly, of what I'm promoting. I wouldn't just take anything and be like, yeah, have this, take this because I want money, you know. So yeah, it's interesting. I go by content creator because that's what I do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So. And I think that is so important because, you know, it is quite a responsibility. I mean, I set up my social media a few years ago, and it was really because I was listening to, and I still do every day, stories of women who are really struggling. My oldest daughter's very artistic, and I used to come home and say, gosh, I've just seen this lady who said, I felt like I've been hit by a bus. My emotions are so dreadful. You know, the shutters have come down. I can't think anymore. And she said, right, put a picture of a bus on, put a picture of shutters on, put that quote on, and let other people know how others are feeling. And I was like, I don't even know what Instagram is, Jessica. What do I do? So she like set up my account.
She
said every morning when you wake up, just post something. And so I started doing that a few years ago, and it's just grown and grown and grown very, very organically. And it's been really interesting to see, the content that blows up more, the content that doesn't, but people still comment and they still learn from it. But it is a real responsibility, and it's an extra layer when you're a doctor, because obviously there's the General Medical Council have a social media conduct. You have to really, make sure that you're doing it in the best way and evidence-based way and everything else, which is so important. And there are times where I just think, oh gosh, I don't know that I can do this, or like you say, oh, I feel more tired, I don't really want to be putting out and doing. But actually it is so powerful to be able to reach people. And I remember the first time I got a DM from somebody who's abroad, and I remember very clearly she was Canadian, 23 years old, and she said, I've just read your content, I'm in the bathroom crying because it's resonated with me. This is me, and I haven't been listened to. I didn't realise young people could be menopausal too. And I thought, gosh, actually, wow, it's not just UK, it's abroad, it's different people, different time zones. And actually, how wonderful to have a platform where you can reach people in a way and not really influence, but change their lives and change their outlook. And, like you, I'm a very... I'm a person that really believes very strongly in women empowerment and choice and enabling people to decide what's right for them. So even as a doctor, I feel like I'm an advocate for people.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to tell people.
Starter, just
precisely.
A conversation starter.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. The best way to help people is to have conversations and be open about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Rather than having one thing that will solve one thing. No, that's not. There's no way in life that one thing will be right for every single person. So I think it's great that you have them conversations and you talk about it, and because it makes everybody feel safe and included. It's very inclusive because not every single person, every single woman is different.
Of course they are, and people want different things. And I remember doing a podcast a while ago with James Smith, who's a massive PT, he's brilliant, and he gets some negativity like anybody. And I said to him, James, how do you deal? And he said, well, that's fine. These people can just unfollow me. They don't have to. They can choose. And I thought, actually, what a great way of thinking about it. We do that with friends all the time. We do it with relationships, and it's exactly the same. So I think I've really learned that you don't have to please everybody.
You can't,
can you?
No, like we're not going to be everyone's cup of tea or coffee, So like they can put sugar in it or they can go. Like it's up to them, But it's what's important is the people that do appreciate what like you or I do. It's going to have a really good impact on them, and that's what's important.
Yeah, and one of the things that some people, especially with medical information, there's always these things that every so often blow up, especially actually about contraception or hormones, that people who are non-medical have put out, especially on TikTok, and people are saying, oh gosh, but then actually my children learn a lot of medical information through TikTok, often through people who aren't healthcare professionals. But sometimes it's not all bad because it starts a conversation. And what's always difficult is that often people only put negative experiences on. So you won't say, oh, I feel so great because I've taken this hormone or I've done this or whatever. It's usually the negative. So then you'll get quite skewed information. But what I'm hearing more and more from younger people is they're so confused about contraception, about hormones, about what to do. And I don't know if that's anything that's on your radar at all.
Absolutely. I'm 27 and I still don't know everything that I probably should. And from a young age, I had really irregular periods when I was younger, and I really, really struggled with cramps and PMS. I think. Well, I don't know my body enough, and it's a shame because I should, and it's not talked about enough. So this is why I love what you do, because you make it a talking point, and I'm sure I can learn a lot from you in that sense. But so I just went on contraceptive from a very early age, because my periods were irregular. I didn't understand why. I was in so much pain. I was throwing up, you know. It got really, really bad. So they just shoved me on the pill. And I was on that for years. And I was just, I still to this day don't understand why. But I was just moody, down, you know, and then still to this day I'm on the implant, you know, and I've never given myself that chance to explore what my body's doing.
Yeah.
I think.
And do you feel different on the implant to how you were on the contraceptive pill?
More numb, I would say. I would feel like when I was on the pill, I was very like impulsively argumentative. It might have been my teenage years, you know. But I was very, very high, very low, very all over the place. Whereas on the implant, I'm just kind of one level. But as I'm getting older and I want to start thinking about potentially having children and stuff, I'm just thinking my body has been on this synthetic, like you said before, this synthetic contraceptive hormone that I don't actually know what it's doing to me.
And did anyone explain to you how the implant works?
I know that see, this is interesting. No. And I was a secondary school teacher.
So just to be clear, you've got this device in your arm that someone's put in.
And it's just in that place, but it goes through my body, doesn't it? Yeah, well, obviously.
So you've allowed someone to put something in, just to be clear.
Yeah. So
and how long does it stay in for?
3 years.
So you put something in for 3 years.
Yeah.
And you don't really know what it is.
No. Because we don't this is all, it's awful, isn't it? Oh God, I'm outing myself now. It's awful. It's just because it's the norm.
Yeah.
And because everybody does it.
Yeah.
You just, you know, my mum was on it. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. My mum, sorry, I should say, just in case it sounds like my man. My mum was on it. And I was just like, okay, I'll just do it. Without actually...
So if I tell you that it contains a hormone, of course, you know that.
Yeah.
It contains a synthetic hormone that's been chemically altered. So what it does is it switches off your natural hormones. So it switches off your estradiol, progesterone and testosterone in your body.
That's crazy. Which is crazy to me. I'm a 27-year-old woman. I should know this.
So it obviously stops you producing an egg, therefore stops you being pregnant.
Yes.
That's lovely. But it switches off all your hormones in your brain, in your body, in your heart system, in your skin. Every single cell in your body has receptors that respond to these hormones, and you don't have those hormones in your body.
The doctors never ever told me any of that. And if I were to know that, I mean, I'm a free woman. I should have educated myself. But they didn't tell me that.
No.
They just said, oh, your periods you'll stop. You know, they'll stop your egg from, you know.
Yeah, precisely. So it's a bit of let's control women by whether they're going to get pregnant or not, without thinking about, let's think about the women's brain and body. And I certainly see a lot of women who have implants who then have quite dry, itchy skin. They have recurrent urinary tract infections. They feel quite low in their mood.
Yes. Sounds very much like me, to be honest.
Because it's giving you a menopause.
Interesting. Wow. Well, there you go. I learned something new. I should know it. It's sad. It's sad that, you know, I know there'll be so many people listening to this, my age, older, younger, that don't know that because they just don't feel like...
No, and to be fair, I feel a bit mean because I sort of almost making fun of you, but I didn't think about it the same way. I've never given implants as a doctor because when they came out, I knew more about hormones. It didn't feel right, almost.
And when was that? Sorry.
They've been probably 15 years or so, quite a long time they've been around. But before that, and even now, there's still something called Depo-Provera, which is an injection. So it's an injection of contraception that lasts 11, 12 weeks. And I used to give it loads. And I feel really bad looking back because we used to give it a lot to stop periods.
Yes,
especially for people who were disabled, had physical disability, because as you know, if you're having a heavy period and you can't walk, it's the last thing you want. So we used to give it a lot to people with different disabilities, people with heavy periods.
Wow, okay.
And then I'm thinking, what was I doing giving this injection? Again, injecting a synthetic progesterone that blocked the natural hormones. Then these women would come back, feel quite low in their mood. Then they'd been given antidepressants.
That's what I've done. I haven't really spoken. It was actually the first time I spoke about that on social media was 3 days ago on my
Oh, was
live,
it? Yeah.
which is interesting. But I've been on antidepressants for, which probably people wouldn't think, for 6 years. Yeah, and it's only recently that I've thought I need to start coming off them. And like I said before, as I'm getting older and thinking about what I want with if I want children, etc., I'm just thinking about all the different things that are going on in my body and what I'm putting in, and this couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah. Well, the synthetic hormones, they've done scans of people who have synthetic hormones like contraception. And looking at the brain activity and the serotonin, our happy hormone in our brain, and levels of serotonin reduce in people who have synthetic hormones.
Wow, okay.
And so it's no surprise that a lot of people then have antidepressants to try and help that. But we know our hormones, so estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, work closely with serotonin and dopamine, our reward hormone, that enjoyment, pleasure hormone that people have. So if you've got low estradiol, low progesterone, testosterone, which you will have because you've got the implants, it can reduce your dopamine and serotonin. So a lot of people say they don't have so much joy and pleasure in things. They're just sort of existing a bit sort of...
I kind of do... I go off. It's hard to explain. When you say that you have difficulty in joy and stuff like that, I would say I still feel it, but I don't feel it.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
I still enjoy, like I said before, like a coffee outside. I know that I know that I love that.
Yes.
It's not necessarily a first time feeling, if that makes sense. Like when I used to do it, which I haven't actually really thought about, I would feel like a sense of, I love this. But now it's like, I know I love this, so I'm going to do this, which is interesting because it could be that then. Yeah.
It's all quite sort of subtle. And I've learned a lot through my clinical practice. Obviously, we give a lot of natural hormones, which are exactly the same structure as our own hormones that we have ourselves. And certainly with some hormones like testosterone, for example, people just have this sort of, they just feel generally happier. That, I know it sounds a bit trivial, but when you've got to unload the washing machine and you're like, I can't be bothered.
Absolutely.
Whereas when you're feeling well, you're like, I'll just do it quickly because it'll take 2 seconds, then I'll do something else that's a bit more enjoyable. And that's often the difference that something like testosterone can have. Right. Progesterone is quite a calming hormone. So that sort of, I'm quite tired, I'm going to do a little bit of meditation, go to sleep very easily. Yeah. Or, oh my gosh, I'm really stressed because tomorrow I've got a big day and I'm not going to be able to sleep and da-da-da-da. Yeah. That's the difference with progesterone and not with progesterone. Yeah. And estrogen often gives people just a bit more sort of positivity, a bit more energy, a bit more focus. These three hormones work in balance really well together. And that's when it's really difficult when people don't have them.
Yeah.
So you still function, but it's just very different.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that because you are explaining me and I've never thought about it. And now I'm going down an ADHD diagnosis route.
Right.
Maybe it's just what the implant. Yeah. It's really got me questioning my own body, and I've never thought of it. I've never thought that the implant would have that effect on me because I didn't know.
Yeah. And this is the whole thing, isn't it? It's knowledge is power. Absolutely. And then making choices. And, again, we see lots of women with ADHD that's either newly diagnosed or worsened because their hormones have started to fluctuate. And a lot of, not just me and my practice, but others abroad as well. I'm doing some work with people in Sweden and Australia who are ADHD specialists, and they're noticing that testosterone, as well as the other hormones, but especially testosterone, really helps with the changes in ADHD and really improves it. Okay. And we know a lot of people are being medicalised with the wrong medication.
Lion's mane, I've heard a lot about
that can help a little bit.
Okay,
yeah. But in medicine, you always want to treat the underlying cause.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, if you've dislocated your knee, you're not just going to put a sticking plaster on and give you some painkillers. You're actually going to try and repair it.
Yes,
and that's the difference with this. So often, with the work we do in the clinic is we'll say, well, let's rebalance your hormones in a natural way. and then let's see what else is going on. Because obviously, like, for example, ADHD, looking at exercise, looking at nutrition, looking at everything else is so important. It's not just taking hormones. But what happens so often, especially with women, is that we'll say, do your exercise, change what you eat, and then forget the hormone bits.
Yes.
And so then you're trying really hard, like you have been. But actually, if you haven't got those hormones, you can't eat them. You can't make them.
I need to get into your clinic. My goodness.
So you probably weren't expecting all of this.
No, I was
not.
No. I really, really wasn't. No. And it's honestly, I'm so glad that we brought it up, because I feel like this is going to help a lot of my audience too, because
that's really important. And it will be very interesting going forward, seeing how much of this conversation will start, because certainly ADHD, hormones, synthetic hormones, contraception is something that people really want to know more. And there's so much confusion out there as well. So having that conversation is going to be really important going forward.
Take it out there.
So I'm looking forward to seeing like what direction you take going forwards as well with your work and everything. Because
I'm coming off this.
Yes,
I'm taking it out. I am. I've been thinking about it for a while, because I've been thinking about what it's doing to me. I don't know what it's doing. But this has kind of solidified my choice, my decision, definitely, I think. And then because I want to see a change, I want to see what I'm like without that, you know.
I think the other thing with hormones is everything's a choice and everything's reversible. So some people, you know, they have natural hormones, they feel better, wonderful. Some people, they might say, well, no, you know what, I felt better when I was taking this contraception, or that's fine as well. And that's the same with anything. It's just literally about being able to choose. But if you don't have that knowledge, you can't make choices.
No, absolutely.
And that's where, you know, the work that you're doing, that I'm doing, just allowing people to think differently, even if it's thinking differently so you feel happy because you're listening to the dad jokes, or you're just watching whatever, it's fine, you know. So
I'll be joking about this, would I?
So no, it's great. And it's really great talking about everything. So just to wrap things up, I always ask for 3 take-home tips.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there's a lot to think about. But I'm really keen to ask 3 things that you think women should do to be in control of the knowledge that they want. So what are the 3 things that you think are good for people to do?
Be open to conversations, and don't be narrow-minded. One solution doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
I guess. I would say also as well, sorry, just going off on a tangent, well, not a tangent, but I would say get checked more. I think I touched on this on my page before. I struggled with my homocysteine levels, and I didn't know anything about them until I did. And I ended up having a blood clot in my eye and just woke up blind one day, which was crazy. But I didn't look at myself enough. I didn't know. I didn't get checked. I didn't get my bloods checked for years and years and years. So I think it's important to be aware of what's going on in your body, which sounds quite hypocritical from everything that I've just said, but be aware. And third one, be confident in asking questions and getting it wrong. Because like today, I've got things wrong, and I feel more empowered getting it wrong, so that because now I know.
I think that's so important. And, you know, learning by your mistakes, learning by negativities, as we start to the podcast, you know, learning from anything that's not gone well, you can only improve. So, and, you know, just not always believing everybody the first time they tell you something, and being questionable is really good, isn't it?
Definitely. Conversations are important. And knowledge is power, like you said. So.
Oh, well, thanks for joining me today. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. I've had a lovely time.
Thank you. Subscribe to my newsletter for exclusive insights and updates on new episodes.